Kevin McCarthy, who lost the Speaker's gavel due to Republican resistance, is downplaying Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to oust the current House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Here's what he had to say on Face the Nation.
I don't think Speaker Johnson's afraid at all, and I don't believe the motion will come up. Well, the motion Marjorie put in was not privileged, so it's not being called up for a vote. I don't think the Democrats will go along with this either. We're close to the election. We watched what transpired the last time.
Well, we will see about that with our political panel. Hogan, Gidley, and Rocha join us now. Hogan previously served as White House Deputy Press Secretary in the Trump administration, and Chuck previously served as Senior Campaign Advisor to Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. And Major is here as well.
I never leave.
Never leave.
Yeah. You can't get rid of me no matter what you try, Kate. You cannot get rid of me.
Never leave. Let's start with you, Hogan. This motion to vacate, where it feels like Groundhog Day all over again. Will this really, should Johnson really be concerned?
No. Look, there are plenty of conservatives out there who are always concerned about these situations because for whatever reason we govern up until the precipice, this big chasm, this cliff, and then all of a sudden all the conservatives have to just say, okay, we'll vote the way we don't want to vote just because you guys mishandled the whole management situation. But regardless of whoever the speaker is, whether it be McCarthy or Jim Jordan or Johnson, the fact is political realities exist here. They do not control the Senate and they do not control the White House. We only control the House, and it's by a slim margin. So these types of things are good for political fodder, but I don't really think they're going to move the ball at all.
And Chuck, as Patty Murray said at the conclusion of last week's business, she, the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee, the deal that we're now passing was essentially the deal available 5 months ago. Right. Nothing has changed except a lot of back and forth that accomplished almost nothing for House Republicans and those conservative stalwarts who wanted to accomplish more because of those same underlying legislative realities.
Well, a lot of things have changed, which is a lot of speakers and a lot of elections, and a lot of elections and a lot of elections for speaker. And what that says to Democrats is a lot of dysfunction. Even the Republicans admit that in the House. Like there's a lot of fighting going on amongst themselves in the House, and it don't look good for them when you can, as a Democrat, run commercials saying that they can't even get along with themselves. And Marjorie Taylor Greene knows what she's doing. She's going to raise a lot of money off of this. She's going to get lots of attention. And we were just talking about this in the green room. It's like she hasn't called for the speakership. She just could, if she wanted to, what puts her in the catbird seat where she's the one controlling Congress, not the speaker. She's the one with the power, and I think that's probably the problem here.
But truthfully, Hogan, the Democrats have as much influence over the House legislative trajectory as Republicans do, because everything that comes to the floor now comes on a suspension calendar, meaning it has to have 2/3 majority, meaning you have to know the Democrats are going to vote for it in the first place. Why? Because if Republicans bring a rule on something only they want, they can't even keep their own side together. So effectively, they've ceded partial control of the House to Democrats.
Yeah, they have. And look, the margins, as we talked about, were slim to begin with, but you're talking about a 2/3 majority vote here, which is obviously difficult to do in any circumstance in today's Washington, D.C., in today's political climate. So, again, these are issues that the Republicans in the House understand are going to be problematic for them moving forward, not just to get something passed, but also to bring the American people alongside them. That is always the issue when you're talking about the House of Representatives.
Let's talk about the Trump trials. Hogan, I'm curious how you're thinking about this, because earlier we were talking about how during the primary campaign, this was something that really galvanized Republican voters to Donald Trump's side. Moving into a general election now, should he be concerned about any of the legal consequences he's facing?
Look, there's a long way between now and November. I mean, it's a political eternity, no question about that. Right now, it looks like a lot of these cases tend to be falling apart, which really accentuates some of the things he's been talking about as it relates to a weaponized government against him, against a political opponent, election interference, two-tier justice system. Things he's been talking about are now kind of playing themselves out in the court. Whether a conviction comes or not, I really don't think that's the left's design here. Because, of course, they'd like that. That's a cherry on top of this sundae. But what they want to do is muddy the waters so that anybody out there thinking about going back to the Republican Party and voting for someone who had America First policies and those agenda items that improve their lives, they don't want any of the drama. That's the purpose of these things, to try and muddy that for voters out there who are really considering a switch when they know how bad Joe Biden has been so far as president.
Chuck, weigh in on that, please.
Look, at the end of the day, we've never seen anything like this. I've been running campaigns for 34 years. I was on a presidential campaign where my candidate had a heart attack. I still haven't seen anything like this. So we don't know. We're all pontificating. Will this hurt him? Most people are like, if somebody gets in trouble in the court system, you think it would hurt them if they're running for president. But when he got indicted, how much money did he raise? It helped him a lot, raise a lot of money. And the one thing I'm keeping my eye on, because it's about the money, is how much money is the RNC and his campaign going to have to pay in legal bills? Is one less commercial they have to run against Joe Biden, which I think is a good thing for Democrats.
Or it's less money down ballot for Republicans,
Great
running
point.
Senate races, governor races, House races. Sure. Because as of late last week, there's now a determination. Committee 47 takes money. It goes straight to Save America PAC, then it goes to the Republican National Committee. Meaning those legal bills are first in line, not down ballot Republicans.
But again, it's not just, although I did say, it's not just to muddy the waters, it's also to bleed him dry financially, to prevent him from using his bully pulpit to get cash in the door, to help those down ballot races, and to hurt him as well. We're already going to be outspent probably 10-1 in this whole thing. But Trump could obviously stroke a check if he wanted to, but if you're bleeding him dry with court case after court case, then it's going to be a problem, obviously.
Was it Alvin Bragg's fault that he wrote checks to Michael Cohen for a false business entity to keep Stormy Daniels quiet?
Was it what now?
Was it Alvin Bragg's fault that happened?
No, this is not about that. This is about going after a political opponent. Look, Donald Trump had been a businessman in this country for decades. No one ever went after his businesses. No one ever went after these things until he won for president. And then he's winning again. And now he's ahead in all these swing states. Shock of shocks. They're bringing a wave of trials on various topics in this election year to try and hamper his ability to win this election.
Jack, you want to weigh in on that?
Look, at the end of the day, it's a long time before the election, and the American people are now starting to tune into this thing. A year ago, we were talking about this same thing. They really weren't, but now they are. And in focus group after focus groups, folks are starting to pay attention because it's getting into summertime and they know elections coming up.
So if you're Biden, are you talking about this, or do you just let this play out and you focus on...
Look, I know I'm just an old Mexican redneck from East Texas, but when somebody's digging themselves a hole, you don't take the shovel away from them. You let them keep on digging, and that's what's happening. And you're going to see him going to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, talking about the good things, talking about how the stock market's at an all-time high. He's going to keep talking about the things he's done to deliver, and you're not going to see him say that much about the Donald Trump court cases.
Does this, Hogan, the reality that starting on April 15th, for about 6 weeks, former President Trump's going to have to be in the courtroom?
Yeah.
Does that materially affect his ability to campaign?
Well, again, because we would argue these are political prosecutions, political persecutions, you can you could use that to your advantage. And no question, if anyone could do that, it's Donald Trump, as you just talked about. Chuck, he's raising a ton of money off of this. But also to accentuate what's going on. There are plenty of people in this country who feel as though the government is weaponized against them. He's the tip of that spear. He's got the bully pulpit. He's able to say the things that a lot of people feel in this country. He's the voice for the voiceless. He was in 2016. He is now at this point in time, too. These court cases are going to be going on, obviously, throughout the entire spring. They could go all the way up until the election. The Trump campaign's pushing for delays, of course. But the fact of the matter is he's going to continue to say he did nothing wrong. He's going to continue to say these people are going after me because I'm winning in the polls. It looks like election interference. And that's going to be the election. We're arguing these types of things on this panel, but we'll be arguing these in public as well. And where the American people fall on it right now, because this isn't happening in a vacuum, it's happening up against the policies that Joe Biden has put in place that have kicked the American people in the teeth for 3 years, then we've got a different argument.
The biggest difference here is that when Donald Trump ran the last time, people didn't know what to expect from Donald Trump. I think that's going to be the biggest difference now. Whether you love him or you hate him, they know what they're going to get if they reelect him.
Right.
All right. Well, we do have a while to go, so we shall see, as we say. Hogan and Chuck, thank you very much. And Major Garrett, thank you for being tied down here and staying the whole time. We appreciate it.